Alex Answer here. It is Saturday, November 16th, 2018. This is a very special video in which I'm putting out. It's actually, in fact, quite exciting because I'm experiencing a new synchronicity, which I'm going to get into in just a little bit. So I'm introducing you to some history, which is absolutely new to me, and it deals with spiritual warfare, really protecting one's environment, one's country from attack. And so this is actually something in which I did not know that Coast to Coast AM in their news section made reference to Dion Fortune and whatever she was involved in the 1940s, specifically the summer of 1940, in which she and people that she was involved with, her mystery school, they were creating thought forms, archetype thought forms based on King Arthur, based on Merlin, based on the Virgin Mary, based on the Christ consciousness, and of course the Knights of King Arthur. And this thought form was put together and it was shared in secret amongst people that were involved with Dion's work, because she had actually been thrown in jail at one point, according to one podcast that I listened to last night. For 9 months, she was detained because she knew too much. See, in the war, the British were putting out a particular message as to how things were going down on the battlefield. And they were projecting things as if they were winning when in fact they were losing. And so she was being contacted by spirits, dead veterans, that were trying to reach her in order to reach their family. I'm sure there's a longer story. She's written many books, and I'm less familiar with her life and the side controversies. But we're going to get to why this is significant personally to Alex Ansary in just a moment. So I'm just giving you some of the ramp up to what I just discovered just the other day, because the synchronicity to this whole thing, to this whole entire thing, is that I've owned her book for a few months, and I just felt that it had some significance, yet I had not read it, the whole thing yet, just pieces of it. And that book doesn't even get into what she got involved in later on in life after that book was published, with regards to the magical battle of Britain. And so this is the article that you can find over at Coast to Coast AM. This is her in her younger years. So I've done several videos already reading segments from her 1930s book, Psychic Self-Defense. I just didn't know that it went this deep down the rabbit hole. So the synchronicity for me is I just brought this up to you yesterday in the video in which I'm going through elements of the book. I didn't know that this was posted just several days ago on coasttocoastam.com. So where we're going to start with this is the synchronicity and finding information. I could be, you could be talking about a specific thing, and it's like 100th monkey. It could be discussed on another element or in another part of the world. We can be seeing these synchronicities. We could be talking about something or hearing a certain word being used while we're reading a book and come across that word. We can find truth at certain synchronistic points in time when we're ready for it. It could find us. And there could be ways in which maybe we're sent signs from either our higher self, because I think that was kind of odd for me to be talking about that for the first time while Coast to Coast AM and their editor or webmaster is posting something in reference to it, because this is not new information. So it seems like maybe a few of us are picking up on this thought form or reality, if you will, for a reason. Now, before I start reading, what I want to share is I was also alluding to in recent videos that I feel like I've experienced certain energetic blowback in my own life when during certain periods on YouTube I've introduced similar ideas. I'm not a part of an order. There are certain things that others would consider that I do amateurish and missing a lot of things. I don't engage in spells. There may be things that Dion and others have gotten involved in regards to the world of magic, but I also think that some of us may have lived other lives in which that knowledge is within us, whereas in this life we may not be a part of an order or initiated in certain things, but there may be knowledge within us because of other experiences that we've had. in this universe. Certain abilities may come to us naturally regarding sixth sense, certain knowledge. We may be talking in a certain tongue. We're speaking of the sacred union, for example, as I do, as opposed to just simply the lustful state run awry, right? And then I start looking at other spiritual traditions and ways in which others have described the fallen world and ways in which others have described psychic self-defense. And I'm coming across a lot of other people's information that seems to be hitting the nail on the head and reminding me of some of the things that I'm discussing, maybe on a different level. Sometimes it's the same language. And so do I find validity in something like that? When I see in my own life that I've been viciously attacked during certain periods in which I'm introducing particular ideas, or if I'm not being attacked by others, I may come across some bad luck because of certain ideas that I've brought to the arena of YouTube. I've experienced that. So it was several years ago, and I'm going to be getting those videos together and then uploading them together. I was discussing the idea of groups being put together where people put their minds together, a collective visualization, and maybe even incorporating other elements like when it's a geomagnetic storm, or even more so, a full moon and a geomagnetic storm. So I think that there is power in knowing about the power of manifestation, and to know that there could be some side effects with creating even archetypes of protection, even in the form of, as she did, there could be a side effect of some of those thought forms if they're not grounded out and dissipating, creating problems, maybe even health problems. So what I'm not doing is entirely endorsing the work of someone else, but telling you that I think that I'm seeing a parallel with the idea of the collective thought form potentially being used to protect. Now, how is this relevant today? The people of the United States may one day be in a situation in which they're praying, in which they're being invaded by China and Russia. It's also said that Carl Jung was able to pick up or predict World War II or the rise of the Nazis based on his understanding of human psychology. And I am looking at the nature of human psychology and collective thought forms as well in the modern era, and I see that there is a violent rise politically that seems to be coming from an archonic place, where there's definitely a spiritual parasitic element to what's taking place within our nation. And I see it as something that's being used to weaken us, distract us from the other threats that are coming. But those other threats that are coming aren't going to be political threats. We're talking geopolitical, we're talking China and Russia. So will there be a time in which there will be people praying to the God of their religion or others? Maybe some will start praying in ways in which they've never prayed before, maybe in certain regions of the U.S., if we are invaded. If we are invaded by standing armies. And I believe the answer is yes. And this is not the first time that I've thought about that. And it's not the first time that I've thought about, like the movie Dark City. I'm actually going to show you a few clips here to help illustrate what I'm getting at. And I think you'll enjoy this video. I am going to leave the audio off, right? But we're going now to YouTube. And this is a scene, for example, from Big Trouble in Little China. Years ago, I thought about maybe doing some sort of a video that showed different action scenes in Hollywood, for example, that articulated or showed the, I'll just share a little bit of audio here. The battle of good and evil. The archetypes of the battle of good and evil as depicted here.
You never could beat me, Hex.
Okay, so even if, you know, it's kind of a comical movie, there is the nature of the projection of energy, and there is the reality of sorcery. And so we can even see it, you know, in a movie from the 1980s that we may consider to be comical, something that has no basis in reality. We also see the exchange of energy between Agent Smith and Neo. So what this depicts is these archetypes coming against each other, and I'm not going to discount the idea of human beings being duped to look up to particular archetypes to save them when their back is against the wall. But I'm not discounting the possibility of spiritual protection and the reality of that. I think that people need to be careful what deities they call out to for protection. Past videos of mine have discussed that. So there are some people that do believe in particular deities watching their back out there on the astral plane or the physical. People should be careful what energies they entangle themselves with. And there may be a possibility that once a thought form is created and used to protect a tribe, that it can come in on itself, especially if they're involved in negativity and they don't have to, just like someone using magic on an individual level. Let me give you another example. Costilla County, Colorado. The town there, you may not know this, they have a legend of them getting down and praying when they were invaded by a Ute Indian tribe. This would be in southern Colorado. Some of you may have seen my my videos with regards to that. Let's go ahead and watch the Lord of the Rings clip here. This also depicts him summoning the kings. And the Lord of the Rings, including the soundtrack, really comes to mind when I read the story of Dion Fortune summoning King Arthur, Excalibur, and the energies that go along with the collective construct for the people of Britain, those things, those archetypes that they would call to, that they believe in, that they activated, allegedly, or at least many people believed in that, and that period of praying during a period in which things could have been a lot worse, because it did appear that the Nazis were winning during a certain period, or they were. Things were misrepresented in the media, so people thought that they were winning. Does that sound familiar? And because she was able to see things as they were, Dion Fortune was able to see things as they were. They put her away because of national security for 9 months, because she saw the reality of ships sinking. But even when she was locked away for 9 months, she wasn't locked up in her cell, because even the jailers liked her. People came to speak to her from all over because of her gifts, and she gave freely. And she had a husband who served in that war in World War I who died, so she was widowed. So she had a special space in her heart for not only those that served, but their families. So this is really interesting because it hits on that, even Hollywood. And people know what that means. And movies like that have done really good. Now, it's interesting that I've been critical of people that are stuck in the Return of the King ideology that worship political forces as if they are savior-like deities. So I have been calling that out for a couple of years as well. How that root desire to see the Return of the King, how it seems to be existing in the collective, how misleading, misguiding, deceiving politicians will play on that symbolism. And the people won't even realize that they're being played, that those forces are actually serving Sauron. And so I think that we have some modern day examples of that. If we go to Dark City, I'm going to hit pause here because the internet is on. And if you go to YouTube, it auto suggests Dark City ending. And the ending of Dark City is basically, final fight, you have the power. And what we have here is him taking on the Archons. And so like Kronos, the deity of time, as we're locked into this time-space reality, that's the Archonic realms. We are in this world of fallen matter. And I do think that there is something even archonic about a lot of these wars, although we're not really getting deep into that. But that's what that's the idea that you're exposed to when you come to this channel. And so there he is. It's almost like, you know, it's telekinesis. Of course, it's a movie, it's fiction, but in the spirit realm, I do think that we have certain abilities to protect ourselves, which is a lot like this. This is how it goes down in the spiritual realm. And some people aren't even able to clear out their own space and ground, even within their own mind. But practices like that are necessary practices to protecting ourselves against those forces that will lead us astray or attack us because of our abilities and what we're sharing with others. So this is him not so much create an archetype, but really being that himself. He has the power. He has the power. And he has taken on those forces of evil. So now that I've shown you these clips, let me show you or read to you this article about Dion Fortune. The 21st century, for all its scientific propensity rivals past civilizations and the widespread and popular acceptance of what is commonly called occultism. From indie bands like Klaxons to mainstream artists like Lady Gaga and Jay-Z, occult imagery and philosophies are spread far and wide with a surprising lack of reaction from all but the most fundamentalist branches of culture. Christian leaders like Rick Warren cast their visions on the culture. Popular Kabbalah is a mainstay in Hollywood. Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard's association with and betrayal of the occultist Jack Parsons is often overlooked, holds sway over established actors like Tom Cruise and John Travolta. Even Oprah, a household favorite, is knee-deep in mysticism and channel teachings. And that is an intro that is using pop culture to kind of warm them up to the idea. However, there's also a lot of people that are on the dark side of that, and a lot of people put it in one category. A lot of people don't understand that, and a lot of people think celebrities and what celebrities do, heaven forbid, Oprah. But I'm reading this blog as it is, right? But just also adding that in, because you shouldn't block yourself to the potential epiphany that you may have as to the power of human mind and thought in prayer when under attack from dark forces. The question now, as always, is where to go for a sober and rational explanation. How does the awakened seeker find something that doesn't stink of fraud or hold a clever hook? And so that was actually his point with bringing up those other examples. I mean, heaven forbid, Lady Gaga. It's also something else I want to mention. A lot of people now are programmed to hate the spiritual. And if they hear the word occult, they think witch. And a lot of people also think about the witches trying to curse Donald Trump also, and they're going to be sensitive to that. So, you know, there isn't really the appreciation for this element of history. And also, it's kind of unique when someone's patriotism and their spiritual abilities are unified instead of people cursing their own government. And we've really been programmed to be against each other and other people within our society. I do believe that people have been programmed to curse each other in the streets. And people do curse each other in the comment sections. I can testify that I came across way more openness and community years ago. You hear me say this often because I never want you to forget. I'm not going to let you, at least without an honest, good attempt on my part, while you're watching this channel, fall into some false ideology that we're winning or something. This is not British propaganda during World War II. There was a period in which they were not winning, but they had to create the sense of it. Now, I believe in creating positive energy around what it is that we're doing, right? But I'm going to keep it real. And there are some forces out there that would like to misuse the law of attraction or misuse certain occultic principles. There's Alex Jones with InfoWars and the V, for example. V for victory, borrowed from what? Crowley introduced that to Churchill. Now, I don't know everything there is to know about Dion or Dion Fortune. But what I do know is that there is also this information about Carl Jung describing the thought forms. The thought forms, and I'm actually going to go to that now. So before we go back to the article, right, again, jumping over here, Carl Jung was discussing the thought forms that was leading to the rise of Nazi Germany. And let me read to you exactly what Jared sent me, because I believe that I have it ready to go. Quote, this is just some information, a report. Insight on dark shaman leaders. Nazis of today who praise Jung or Jung most often do for his supposed characterization of Hitler as Wotan, or Wotan, or Odin, a comparison that thrills neo-pagans who, like the Germans did, use ancient European belief systems as a cover for modern racist nationalism. In his 1936 essay, Wotan, Carl Jung describes the old god as a force all of its own, a personification of psychic forces that moved through the German people towards the end of the Weimar Republic, through the thousands of unemployed who by 1933 marched in their hundreds of thousands. Wotan, Carl Jung writes, is the god, storm, and frenzy, the unleasher of passions and the lust of battle. Moreover, he is a magician and artist in illusion who is versed in all secrets of an occult nature. In personifying the German psyche as a furious god, Carl Jung goes on as far to write, "We who stand outside judge the Germans far too much as if they were responsible agents, but perhaps it would be nearer the truth to regard them also as victims. One hopes," writes Brask, evidently against hope, that Carl Jung did not intend his statements as an argument of redemption for the Germans. Whatever his intentions, his mystical radicalization of the unconscious in Wotan accorded perfectly well with the theories of Alfred Rosenberg, Hitler's chief ideologist. Like everything about Carl Jung, the situation is complicated. In a 1938 interview published in 1942, Carl Jung repeated many of these disturbing ideas, comparing the German worship of Hitler to the Jewish desire for a Messiah and a characterization of people with an inferiority complex. He describes Hitler's power as a form of magic, but that power only exists, he says, because Hitler listens and obeys. So by saying that someone's using magic, it's not necessarily an endorsement or promoting those ideas, but someone coming across someone describing someone as magical could attach themselves to that thought form and that belief system and give it power and go, "Awesome, dude. Right on, Archons." And there are people now in this day and age that will attach themselves to things that have a supernatural overtone. It's true. Carl Jung's observations are bombastic, but they're not flattering. The people may be possessed, but it is their will, he says, that the Nazi leader enacts, not his own. The true leader, says Carl Jung, is always led. He goes on to paint an even darker picture, having closely observed Hitler and Mussolini together in Berlin. Describes him as a robot, like being covered with a mask. During the whole performance, he never laughed. It was as if he was in a bad humor, sulking. He showed no human sign. His expression was that of a inhumanely single-minded purposiveness with no sense of humor. He seemed as if he might be a double of a real person, what people would call today a clone, and that Hitler, the man, might be hiding inside like an appendix, and deliberately so hiding in order to not disturb the mechanism. With Hitler, you do not feel that you are with a man. You are with a medicine man, a form of spiritual vessel, a demi-deity, or even better, a myth. With Hitler, you are scared. You know you would never be able to talk to that man because there is nobody there. He's not a man, but a collective. He's not an individual, but a whole nation. I take that to be literally true, but he has no personal friend. How can you talk intimately with a nation? So, Dion Fortune died in 1946 because she was battling the dark occult. And there is just so much I took in from a podcast last night from a Paul Weston, who actually in 1996 and 1997 tried to recreate with a group in the physical in Europe, specifically in the UK, a certain area in the UK. Not only that, but he talked on and on about this place where she was, believes to have some sort of magical significance with unique magnetism. Now, she didn't even know on her end, Dion Fortune, that across the region of Europe, Hitler's SS were establishing their own council. And there's descriptions of what they did there in these rooms and the different types of Egyptian information they attempted to use and other information. Sounds like they went through a large buffet of a lot of different things. But what Dion was doing was circulating in private, not in public. But she was doing it in private. Whatever she was doing, whatever spells, like a few people engage in maybe saying certain words. And there are things in that book where she's like, certain things I'm not discussing in this book. And so what I've come to understand, there's certain things, spiritual teachings that are kept in secret, but they're going to be attacked by Orthodox folks or people that don't believe. Everything that's kept secret, what's your secrets? What's your bank balance? What's your, place of employment? People keep things personal anyways. But if people are going to go in deep to certain things, they may choose to create a little bit of distance, or if they're seeing people rounded up, and history shows us that certain spiritual ideas, for example, she was actually rounded up under the Witch Act of 1760 something, was it 63? She was rounded up under the Witch Act for those 9 months because Dion Fortune knew too much about a ship that was basically taken out by the Nazis. So the UK is busy saying everything is fine here, everything is fine. And then she's picking up on information, going, no, not everything's fine. And I'm picking up on some information, and it seems like people need to do something about this. And that's not to say that I know that she has full credit in stopping the Nazis, because those of us that look at controlled wars and the rise of certain figures, like Hitler didn't do that alone. And certain people that are alive today that people think are rogue and, not in with the establishment. Oh, they're in with the establishment and they're fulfilling an agenda. But the people of that particular time and era, just like of this time and era, don't see the writing on the wall. They don't see the obvious. There was also a story that was told about, it was either Churchill or someone else allegedly was in enemy territory during World War I. And maybe it was Dion's husband, but they had to use their own intuition to know what house to knock on because they were stranded. And they were in an area that was all in support of the Germans, not the British. And so literally intuition, and you've heard me talk about that. There may come a time where the intuition needs to accompany the warrior, where it can't just be the strength or the gun, but an intuition that is clear enough and tapped into spirit enough, pure enough to even hear the signal, pure enough to even be able to detect anything. Because if someone's not pure and they have demons, they could be led right into the enemy camp as well. The life and times of Dion Fortune. I don't know if there's any movies that's been made per se. But what I am going to do is read some more of this. And it gets even interesting. There is a video that I believe is embedded in this. Okay, so we're going to go back to this. I'm going to read this. Thank you for your patience. But the video that I'm going to show you has some, it was made by Disney, but, and I believe that's the actress that was in Murder, She Wrote. The scene there where she's basically summoning the spirits and summoning the knights, the author here says, it's a lot like what Dion Fortune is believed to have done. So we'll get there in just a moment. Christian leaders cast their visions on the culture. We went through this. How does the awakened seeker find something that doesn't stink of fraud or hold a clever hook? Going into Dion, the tradition that upheld the greatest spirits that humanity has produced is today given over to the most malignant intentions of our species. Signposts leading upward to revelation and renewal have been turned around to point us on a path of dissolution and negation. Dion Fortune is quoted with, quote, "If the light that is in us is darkness, how great is that darkness?" Born in 1890 or 1891, she saw the end of the 19th century and lived to see the end of World War II. We'll go ahead and make this large enough so you can read most of the text. It was during the Second World War that our most famous practical application of occultism came into play with what became known as the Magical Battle of Britain. And this is a book. I don't have this book, but it's at thriftbooks.com. There's also some videos you can watch on YouTube. Well, so much of what we think today in esoteric philosophies, centers around self-help and personal gain. Dion's focus went far beyond this limited application. Gathering a group of like-minded practitioners, she coordinated active visualizations of Arthurian and Christian archetypes to combat the fevered mythos of the Nazi Party. There's much debate over how much awareness Hitler had of the occult sciences. However, there was no doubt about the fact that Himmler of the SS was more than active in his pursuit of esoteric knowledge. So there was a castle that they formed, a central place in Himmler's conception of the mythical knighthood of the SS, and it was his intention that it would become the center of the world after the successful rise of the Third Reich, in direct opposition to this mythopoetic scheme. For the furtherance of the Nazi world order was Dion's Fortune's use of Glastonbury Tor as a center point for what she saw as a new Avalon. So let me go back and correct this. Glastonbury Tor is like a mythical place or a focus of visualization. And that's what was pretty interesting about that clip from Lord of the Rings, was just the reference of the kings in spirit waiting to be activated. But I can also see a dark side to that as well. Absolutely. Someone really needs to know what they're dealing with, and I'm sure there's more to know about Dion Fortune and everything here. But this is fascinating. And the very fact that I would be thinking about this, by the way, and bringing it up to you, right, at the same moment, for example, that, it's being discussed on Coast to Coast AM, or being posted on their website, that is incredible. And I see that as what is known as synchronicity, but not dark synchronicity, a clue, a signpost. A signpost that reminds me of my own videos just a few years ago. I'm going to upload some of those together in the future, probably tomorrow. And I'm discussing the very same thing of people putting their minds together and diffusing psychic attacks. But to literally create the archetype, I'll tell you this real quick. Of course, there's so much more to get through. There is a story, I think I mentioned this earlier, but the story about the San Luis archetype with the Ute Indians, along with some of the other imagery that we see in Hollywood, it fills the imagination maybe with a sense of knowing something within us already understands. And it can even be said that we're really not the body, that we're really it could even be said maybe somewhere else or beyond this physical form. Almost tuning into this physical form, thinking that this is our real self. Well, only for the moment, not in the totality of things. And so these abilities are based on something deeper about our true nature. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Here's another quote from Dion. Great is truth and shall prevail, and no one who is sincere need fear her. Now, going further, in this battle can be seen the poles of the sacred sciences. On one hand, a group of souls striving for the health of the society. On the other, the mythic legacy of an entire people turned inward to selfish behaviors and destruction. Not only that, they inverted a sacred symbol, the swastika. They inverted that. We know that now. So when we talk about the archons and evidence of an inverted fallen world where symbols are used not for good purposes, but inverted, so not all symbols and numbers and names of ethnicities or anything is inherently evil. But the evil will come around, mock, laugh like the devil, and act like certain numbers, things are evil, when they are the ones that want to have a monopoly on understanding and using energy. That's why we've been bullied for so long through religions to not look in certain degrees or directions or degrees of directions. And then people think that the people actually trying to help them are the ones involved in the conspiracy. And that is a great way to describe the mass mind control on YouTube and on the internet, where there is a demonization of spiritual truths, spiritual protection, where it is literally confused for the world order or people that want to create a world order, or where you actually hear from people say, oh, look at those people that are getting along and not murdering each other. Look at the multicultural agenda as they come together under the one world order, where, wow, you want to see constant conflict amongst all people at all times. They're sitting together, laughing, smiling, and there's people from different parts of the world. That's not the result of a conspiracy, but they are centralizing power. But they are also waging wars and directing people to those wars. So the agenda, I say to you, is for them to manufacture wars amongst the people. The agenda is not to see peace amongst the people. That is not the New World Order agenda. But they will use postcards. They will use posters of happy, shiny people holding hands while the bombs continue to drop. You need to be intelligent enough to realize the system isn't actually promoting peace. That's on the path of the individual to protect their mind from intrusion and direction and mind control. That's on the individual to protect themselves from mind control. That's not my responsibility. But I will turn on the camera and the microphone and tell you that I'm seeing a connection between this gnosis that we can see in movies, and we can see in Dark City, and we can see in The Matrix, and we can see in Lord of the Rings, and we can see in The Never-Ending Story, and we can see this. During her life, Dion was no stranger to controversy. She opened up a mystery school. Ooh, we've all been programmed to think all of them are with the dark side, haven't we? In this post-9/11 world, in this fast food McDonald's, Orthodox religion dominated false view of the conspiracy. Oh yeah, there's a box for everybody that's outside the box of atheism and religion. So without going deep into all the history, she's written so many books. I want to get a little closer to the actual activities of this time period. So Dion Fortune's 1940 Glastonbury work was never public knowledge when it was going down. It was conducted in secret. Okay? So if she was back doing YouTube at the time, she probably wouldn't have talked about it widely on her YouTube channel, or she probably would have dealt with some major unfortunate set of circumstances. If one's going to go in this direction of using magic and coming against dark forces, one needs to be wearing the big boy pants and needs to make sure that their own side of the street is clean, that they have their defenses up, that they're in a strong place. Because as I said yesterday, somebody could be doing good work and come across those entities and challenge them and maybe even diffuse some of their power, and they may come across poor health later in life. I wonder if this, whatever she was involved in, because the occult on the side of Nazi Germany was very organized. And if there's only a small group of people that are coming against them in the UK, then, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that there could have been some energy backlash from some of the things that she was involved in and putting herself on the radar, because certainly there would have been intelligence. And if they were using remote viewers or people with certain occultic abilities on the side of the Nazis, then maybe they would be able to identify also her identity and who she was. It writes here, it wouldn't surprise me, or it says here, if Dion Fortune had this saga somewhere in the back of her mind during the early days of her magical Battle of Britain workings, when she and her associates visualized giant angels standing guard along the shores of the North Sea. She believed that it's possible to work with mythic archetypes and essentially switch them on in the back of the collective mind. Dion Fortune was certainly intending to boost the spiritual morale of the nation in 1940, and the example of how the Mons myth had done this in the previous war may well have been an encouragement. I think it's worth noting that the Disney film Bedknobs and Broomsticks taps into the same energy. The main Angela Lansbury character is a witch who enchants the exhibits in a museum to fight against a Nazi U-boat crew who came ashore in a archetypal sleepy British seaside town. The Germans find themselves looking up to a cliff top where an army of knights, redcoats, and representatives of the whole continuity of British history are standing guard. Let's go ahead and play this. Okay, so we are playing this without audio, having already shown you a couple other Hollywood clips without audio, so you get the understanding. And so she's saying particular words, and I haven't watched this clip yet. I've just watched maybe a couple seconds of it, but you get the idea. They become animated by the things that she's saying. Again, reminded me of the story of the archetype figure that protected San Luis, Colorado from attack. They had very solid, very strong Catholic views. And so they have a particular deity or a particular Messiah may not be the right word. So certain things that are familiar to certain regions and cultures could potentially be activated to protect them from harm. Other things, again, have to be considered. Side effects. Do they have their own house in order? Also, look at the people of Afghanistan and Russians losing the war there after they invaded. And I think the West and Russia both work both sides of the conflict, but their own unresolved issues amongst the Afghan people, for example, after the Russians were defeated, they begin to war amongst each other. So if there's a lot of also prayer in a particular region, maybe like a holy war, where after the common enemy is defeated, then where does the archetypes of the thought forms then go if they're not properly diffused? They can then turn to gods of war on that population. And it can also occur through domestic strife and domestic breakdown of the population. Of course, I'm just speaking in free flow. But, I'm looking at where this connects with the real world, connects with pop culture, connects with mythos, connects with the fall of Sophia and the Sophic myth and the fact that we're in a fallen world, but yet we're powerful spirits or beings in a fallen world that have the abilities to, to be frank, to stop standing armies. And one day I wonder if people will be summoning or praying to God or other spirits one day here in the United States on the Cascadia subduction zone, or rather also, that's the Pacific Northwest, the Continental Divide, I meant to say, and also other places. What if there was a major earthquake, the Madrid Fault? Leon Legant, with his vision, of course, of the occupation, has also predicted a lot of nastiness amongst the people of the South in the Mississippi River in the future once this war begins. So we could literally be looking at a future where people stand on mountaintops and they pray for their country to be protected or for them to be victorious. Imagine people standing and terrified on a mountain while knowing that Oregon's already been taken, while knowing that California has already been taken, while knowing that Washington has already been taken, that the enemy troops are already within the nation and they're moving down I-5 and they're setting up bases in Idaho. Now, maybe from that position or from that level of desperation, people may want to then get right with God, so to speak. And there literally could be a whole history of people, and there probably is, using thought forms and archetypes from the higher realms to the lower realms to assist them in war and defending their homeland. But when it's down to either you win and defend yourself, or they're going to take over and take your wife as well, when people are in certain situations, then maybe they may turn to certain things or want to change their life. Why do we talk about change your life? Why do we talk about change your ways? Because people could also be attracting evil to them. And it seems like this nation has been programming people to attract more more negativity through the nations that they're invading and attacking. more negativity to the nation, more karmic consequences, more demons, more archonic energy. As 5G goes up and people get concerned about that, they're also missing the energetic contamination from the never-ending wars in the co-opted left and the right. Right? So I sense danger coming to your nation. I sense danger coming, and I can see why. And I can see where the invitation to the evil comes from. And I can see that there are certain things that people can do, right, to change that. To change that. While we watch this clip, it almost seems as if those are almost the bad guys, the ones that are walking without bodies. But again, they're not. In this particular clip, those are the ones that Angela Lansbury, who's no longer on the planet, she has summoned Arthur. She has summoned Arthur and the Knights, and they're coming to protect. They're coming to protect against the Nazis. And the article here is raising the question, was this based on Dion Fortune? And then it's noted, right? We'll take a brief look over here. That was really entertaining. That it was written in 1943 by an American. Right here. And it says, I have heard of cursing for Christ, where small groups get themselves a bit worked up to bring down a bit of fire and brimstone on perceived evildoers. During the first Gulf War, a psychic known to me became convinced that the Iraqis were employing ancient sorcery to raise jinn in the desert to mess with Desert Storm. Concerning that Saddam was rebuilding Babylon and portraying himself riding about in a chariot and wearing a leopard skin, I don't find that hard to believe. What is Dion Fortune's legacy like today? I think Dion Fortune has actually proved to be hardly perennial and is perhaps even increasing in popularity and influence, but the modern focus tends to be a few select books, like The Sea Priestess and Moon Magic, ooh, and Mystical Kabbalah. And see, I've grown up my whole life seeing things like this absolutely demonized as that of the New World Order. And now that I've seen so many people co-opted by the illusions of separation, every lie we've been told by people that purport to be against the systems of control, we have to look closer at. We're going to come across people that are straight up into witchcraft. We're avoiding that. We're looking for actual spiritual knowledge. We're looking for actual clues that can help us defend ourselves from the archons of this world, because it is not demonic to know that we are under attack. And there aren't people that are just going to come and save us by just joining a religion or joining a gang or joining a military or joining the left-right paradigm. And if you walk the independent path, you may come against forces that are trying to suppress you or suppress your message. But unless you actually walk a path of truth, not disinformation, you may not know what that's like. And it may be perceived that, well, hell, we'll just keep our head down and buried in the sand, and things will be easier. Things may seem easier. As the Titanic, however, continues to sink. And the collective psyche has continued to sink. So somebody may be engaged in something like this just to, right? They may not even be involved in truth speaking. They may just simply have the interest in not wanting to let the group think or thought forms infect them. It could be hatred. It could be racism. It can be war after war after war. It could be the left-right paradigm. It could be marked with that violent, angry, rageful vibrational frequency. And so somebody may literally have to almost fight off a thought form or a certain type of pressure from a significant other or a family member, but they must know, like He-Man, that they have the power. That they have the power. They have the power. They have the power. You have the power. You are the one. And see, it is through that gnosis that people can break free from the things that control them. What we're going to show you now is something that is shocking, because when we talk about Alex Jones and we talk about the thought forms that he is bringing, right? Well, here we see the creation of the common enemy, and someone could literally, yeah, as they say, like run the other thing on the southern border. It's also said that Soros is connected with Putin, yet Putin gets a free pass. Or that Soros is even connected with Trump. And there could be other forces there, problem, reaction, solution. But you see the lack of compassion. You see almost the demonic anger rising without people realizing that we're being played, right? Brother against brother, man against woman. And as you see this progress, you see the creation of the thought form. You see the role Alex Jones plays, right? Well, not focus on things that really matter, right? But literally saying, I am death. He says, I am death. This man has people that call themselves Christians and they watch InfoWars. There are people that falsely think they're Christians and they watch InfoWars. And InfoWars shows them poor behavior of what a Christian would say or do. They falsely believe he's a Christian. They falsely see themselves as Christians. So they use the Christian sigil and thought form, and even Jesus. Well, in reality, watch what their leader says to them.
They want to overthrow the country. They're allied with the most murderous regime in history, and they know they're involved in a conquering operation.
The woman with the mural is not live.
I mean, where are your?
I have to cut
now
away
you
every time he
understand this
plays
is
music.
witchcraft. You understand stuff didn't exist with Dion.
And we try to
Fortune was
avoid his
alive.
ads.
Placate them,
That's
be
all.
friends with them, and sit here and play nice. They're not playing nice.
Sorry, this is kind of like a rhythm that we've developed having done this.
Hitler could only dream of technology like this.
Has the spirit, the program.
He plays 4 minutes of ads.
And that's why
for every 8 minutes of
Propagandists
content,
like
we
this.
are death.
which I find to be
Pay
excessive.
attention.
Clinton and to Barack Obama and
this
Lord
is
Rothschild.
key.
You understand? I'm the
But that should tell you
Reaper.
that the deplatforming really did actually hurt.
And they know it. I'm death of their system, and you're death to them. We really just love life, but see, to them, we're death. And if we won't stand against these possessed people.
There's actually a spirit of death, and Alex is opening a doorway when he says, I am death. I don't think this is a very healthy practice spiritually for him. Or
This YouTube video is from Jesse Spots. Let's go ahead and roll that back one more time. Again, Jesse Spots is the YouTuber who you hear commenting over this, and he has put together some decent commentary on what is happening with Alex Jones. The name of this video is InfoWars Predictive Programming. And so it's so demonic coming from InfoWars. I'm not doing analysis. People like Jesse Spots and others, they may not take the dark side as far as I do. It's worse than what the biggest Alex Jones critics even understand. Because it defies belief systems. Even those that are Christian need to understand this is dark level Satanism. I mean, this dude is animated with the Spirit, but not the Holy Spirit. And that's why he could say, I am death, I am bringing death, and have a Christian audience. He is there to mislead people into how a Christian would act.
Tell you, Reaper, that the deplatforming really did actually hurt.
And they know it. I'm death of their system, and you're death to them. We really just love life, but see, to them, we're death. And if we won't stand against these possessed people.
He is creating the thought form. He is creating the thought form of death. Alex Jones is doing what Dion Fortune has done, but he's on the dark side. You need to understand there are people that are going to like, oh, she's a witch, Dion Fortune, but they're going to be fans of Alex Jones who is actually engaging in witchcraft in front of their very eyes, and they claim they're Christian, but they're engaged in creating a thought form of death. They're prepping for the post-2020s. They're prepping for the activity that they'll be engaged in that the world will use as the pretext for the China-Russia intervention. I'm on record for multiple years saying this individual that you're looking at on the screen now, this individual has played a huge role. You see, but it would take someone like me who was actually a fan of his in the early days, who was doing street actions in the early days, to see him for what he is, because I see it on a level that his critics in the mainstream media do not. Okay, they're not looking at what it really is. And it's something incredibly dark. So we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. I want to thank you for tuning in today. This it didn't take a lot out of me, but it took a lot for me to put my focus together and go, okay, I'm going to show you clip number 1, clip number 2. I want you to understand this. I want you to understand I'm not in an order. I want you to understand I don't channel. I want you to understand that I'm having the objectivity, though, to look at this, acknowledging that there is white versus black, not in terms of racial, but in terms of magic. There is the battle of good and evil, and it is in your movies, and you recognize it, and many of you are fans of that, and it's even in some of your belief systems, but it's happening here in our world on a level in which a lot of people won't take it. I just showed you a man engaged in witchcraft that's creating a thought form of death, and will be leading his followers to be behaving in a way that will be giving foreign nation states full-on excuse in their eyes, in the minds of the public, to invade the United States, as he plays a role knowingly as the big bad bully who's going to marginalize whole groups of people, and say death, 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 while projecting that the others are the ones that are involved in the death, 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 while bringing a little bit of his own. So you need to be able to understand that and identify that when you see Alex Jones and when you see the rise of others and Charlottesville and the Torch March. They're creating thought forms. This is the new far right. It is an updated version using technology that Adolf Hitler did not have access to. He did not have access to the types of technology now that can create the fake news, that can create common enemies and whip people up and even create targeted individuals. Again, they can think that they're woke. They can think that they're conspiracy theorists. They can think that they're against the New World Order, and they can fit right into the New World Order's hands because the conspiracy is real. The left won't acknowledge that. MSNBC won't acknowledge that. The people back home in Portland won't acknowledge that. The conspiracy is there. All of that anger that they're projecting towards Trump is the New World Order. It is the conspiracy. It's the same system that some of us have been against for multiple decades, but they can't see that. They think that Obama was a part of a different system. They think that Bush is a part of a different system. They see Trump as just some inanimate object. Some of it realize that it goes deeper. Some of the people do realize that it goes deeper. But you're not hearing from those people today in the mainstream media, right? They have locked us into this left-right divide. So going to the last bits of information, Avalonian and Aeon, and I'm not a fan of Crowley, and Fortune may have been all over the place with her own groups and her secret societies, and, they may have been doing certain things that people don't do today. Those are also times where people had Facebook and technology. Those are times where people used to actually do things in the real world. So sometimes they went a little bit deeper into their spiritual orders. But you know what? Don't act like society is innocent. I'm going to wrap up my thoughts here. Don't you for one second act like society is innocent. Society today, right, uses the internet and the surveillance society to dox, threaten, harass, pull code on people. I mean, all the time. And so when you're dealing with someone that's going to organize people in a small group and say, hey, let's focus on ourselves being victorious. Today they'll be called a witch and be accused of the dark arts. My last thoughts are, though, if the invaders are coming and the ships are coming, right? I think that will be then a period in which even some of the most strongest atheists might be willing to get down on one knee and go, oh, God, help us. Just make something happen. And, there are people out there that have lived during incredibly dangerous times. And the reason that she did this, they were facing incredibly dangerous potentials. And she was tapping into something potentially intuitively and seeing the reality of what was happening on the battlefield, regardless of the British system and media saying that they were winning. And she saw something wrong in that. Like, whoa, you're saying like we're winning, and in fact, we're losing all these people over here and ships over here. And so things were done. Things were done. It was also said that they saw victory coming down the line in spirit, even after they did what they did and things seemed against the odds. It still seemed that the British were losing. In their mind, they had already won. There are people today that feel that way as well. And I would like to see us through this because we're facing a similar thing. My question to you is, how can we, without invoking strange spirits, but really do our homework into some of these traditions, mythos, like King Arthur, and maybe determining, like, how would Americans in the future, now we have technology and we have a way to talk instantaneously, would there be potentially a way today, in today's day and age, where we can put our thoughts together and it not turn into something that's going to be detrimental? You know, so I'm just here to plant some seeds, ask some questions. You know, is it an accident that people are looking at this knowledge now, as we see articles about China recently saying that they are moving in more of a direction of preemptive war, as if they're following a page from the Book of the West? Can you imagine if we dealt with a more aggressive China that's going to push forward with a preemptive war at a time where we're going through an economic collapse? Does it seem like we're almost reliving history, but coming across clues and knowledge and spiritual teachings that may help us weather the storm of tomorrow? With that, I'll see you in the next video.